Hi, Alison.
Hi,
Um,
Hi, Adam. Lovely to see you.
Lovely to see you too. We had met a few years ago after your brilliant your feature, Cielo, and I was just really so impressed with that, and so were a lot of other people. It got a lot of attention. It was on a number of 10 best lists for that year, and a lot of the sensitivity and sensibility that you showed in that film is now really so beautifully and succinctly expressed in this new work, perfectly a strangeness, great title. You want to talk about the journey from the feature because there's clearly this uh, incredible way in which you're photographing the night sky and these um, it's just such a sensory experience. And can we talk about your process for the people who haven't seen the feature and to somehow introduce them to this beautiful short that you've made?
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much, Adam. I'm a big admirer of your work too, so thank
Thank
you.
you.
Yeah, so I had to the challenge was I had to deliver a short in the same area as we'd filmed Cielo, my feature, and I just thought, what could I do that was completely different, that felt very different, and this area which I find so magical, and so from another world too. And so there were two things, two starting points for me. One starting point was my first, because I wanted to create a kind of tall tale or a fable that happened in like 24 hours or something, simplicity in the best sense of that word. And I wanted to, because voiceover was such a challenge for me in Cielo, I wanted to do something without any dialogue, with just sound and music. And so I went back to which I often do, my first experiences in a place. And the first experience in an astronomical observatory in Chile was I arrived and you're like 3,000 meters and above. And I walked in this observatory amongst these massive metallic domes. And and the scientists were asleep. It felt abandoned. But you could hear these sounds of these domes, this purr and little clinks at time. They felt alive, in other words. And and it reminded me. And then, of course, at night, when the stars come out, the sun goes down. It's as if these domes, these beasts, sort of cost billions of dollars, come alive and dance. And that reminded me of when I was in Scotland doing my first film of a Scottish myth about the Ring of Bragda in the Orkneys, where these big circle of standing stones at midnight they get up and dance until dawn comes, and then they become stones again. So there was that mythic quality I was interested in. And then the second starting point was that there were often donkeys. Um, Many donkeys among these in the lower observatories, and I have a weakness for donkeys. And I just thought, how do they see? I posed the question, how do they see this world? But I really was after a non-anthropomorphic, uh, because non-anthropomorphic um, sense of their presence in this world. And then I created a treatment, etc. And then we explored donkey's eyes with lenses. I could go on about that, but in terms of the journey, those were the sort of two starting points, which led, of course, to cinematic explorations, etc.
Well, that you use that term that they came alive when you're talking about these billion-dollar sensory apparatuses. And I just love the contrast between these man-made apparatuses and all the movements and gestures they make trying to receive this incredibly complex information in the sky, but then contrasting that with the incredible sensory apparatuses that the donkeys have, right? These incredible ears and these eyes, as you said, these like I've never seen an animal's eyeball as large, really. And you and there's these wonderful, very touching and quite humorous shots of their ears. And I never realized that, their ears are constantly kind of moving and adjusting like antenna, I suppose, to where sounds are from, and it's as though we're going towards this man-made apparatus through their journey, right? And it's really touching. It's really beautiful the way you design it with sound, because we hear, their hoofs as they make their way along the road towards this observatory, or this really, I suppose it's one of the most advanced observation sites in the world, right? It must be. And so this contrast between something which is so man-made without seeing any human beings, really devoid of human beings, and just felt through these three lovely animals, right? I just found it really touching, and it's a very sensual experience. And you call it perfectly a strangeness, but it is perfectly a strangeness because we are introduced to our own ability to feel and appreciate things that we don't think about most of the time, which is um, how gifted we are with these with our ability to perceive the world around us, both through the natural instruments that we have and that we share with these lovely three animals, these three mules, or donkeys, I should say, and then the apparatus that we built. Like, I think that that's really interesting. And then the level, I mean, the last shot is just, seeing it all through a mirror, which is just the most simple of apparatuses. But all these different ways in which we have perception,
Mm.
and it's offered to us, and it's really exhilarating and so joyful to watch this film.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much, Adam. Um, yeah, well, it reminded me perfectly of Strangeness. There's something about also the Atacama Desert for me that is it provokes, inspires, I guess maybe it's the better word, certainly inspires reflection because in so many ways for me, one is it's this other world. Often in the northern Atacama, scientists do tests for to liken it to Mars because it's so there nothing grows and it's so incredibly for me it's so incredibly quiet too. You can't record it unless there's wind. So and it feels like some other world. So it inspires that sense, which I was going for, that whether it's a young child or a donkey, that you're experiencing that the world, you're discovering the world for the first time. And so that's well, as you expressed, that was really what I we were going for. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, and also just there's something about our contact with the donkeys. Well, first of all, I have to say, and I might be off track here because we're watching it around the holiday season, and so of course we're seeing, these stars in the sky, and we're seeing three donkeys, and we're thinking of the three wise men. Uh, I'm not sure if that was intended, but it becomes really resonant at this time of year, this spiritual
Right.
as well. Was that in your mind at all, or is that just because I'm watching it right before the holiday?
Well, I certainly thought of that. It wasn't foremost in terms of how to recount this sensorial tall tale, but certainly it was in my um, in my consciousness. I mean, put it that way, I guess, And
This and with the stars, right? And this idea of that special star that guides us, right? And that each of these are possibly special stars. Maybe I'm bringing that into it from the first feature, the Cielo, but there just seems to be these. There's a way that you're shooting these night skies, which is just so exquisite. How do you do that technically? How do we get that the contrast between what's happening in the night sky and what's happening on Earth?
right. Well, in terms of the sequences of the night sky, most of those were done with time lapses, and because so there's contrast with some of the shots you'll see with donkeys or at night are done, of course, it was with a Sony. Oh, I always forget the names of them, A7S3 or whatever, and then various photographic lenses. So, but the time lapse longer sequences were all done with again, DSLR cameras and wide angle lenses.
But were you able to shoot, like, were you, in terms of the actual night sky and seeing the donkeys within that frame, is that a single frame, or are you superimposing different times
Well, I don't
over?
think we have any, yeah, we didn't have any. I was curious to try, but I knew it wouldn't work. Any time lapses with donkeys because they'll move and it'll look
Yeah,
kind of ghosty. So, but yeah, the night that Sony's sound like an advertisement, but the Sony camera is well known. Digital camera is well known for, which is why we used it for night sensitivity at night. So, so the shots where you see the donkeys and stars, that was shot at night
beautiful.
with this camera.
So again, for all of the apparatus that we have to perceive the world, of course, you're also implicating your own apparatus, right? The film lens and the ability to capture a reality that's not really available to us through the naked eye and enhance that. It's just, there's so many different levels of perception, but it's all grounded in the way that these three donkeys are actually approaching the world. And that's what gives it this humor, right? And this,
Right.
there's just, there's something very whimsical about it and yet very touching. And I found that really rare. Like, it was it just felt like a new way of storytelling. And
Oh,
uh,
oh, that's
where
great.
did
Well,
is that
that was a big part of my reason to do this film. Sometimes, which I find an honor as a filmmaker, but sometimes the film, like we were lucky to premiere at Cannes, which I never thought. We just thought, oh, the film is 15 minutes. Let's try Cannes. And so it was alongside all what you would call fiction shorts. And then, sometimes it's in the documentary and sometimes it's in the um it's just with yeah anyway experimental, it's like all over but I guess why am I saying that is my favorite types of films personally are those hybrid forms. I love using what I think the best, what for me is the most exciting in fiction and the most exciting in documentary. So to give you an example, I wrote a treatment in four movements, a very simple treatment, though I'm no composer. But, I wanted very a simple, the donkeys are in this unnamed desert. They go up the hill, they explore the observatory. The sun goes down, stars come up, the observatory comes to life and dances. And then we're back in the observational world and they go back again. So why am I saying this is because it was like um, there was more quote fiction parts of it, getting them up the hill, and having controlling all the different telescopes to come to life through talking to all these scientists across the world. All that we could call more fiction. But I worked with a wonderful DOP, Nicola Caniccioni, who's really great at both doc and fiction for me. So as soon as the donkey's ears started to do their thing, for instance, he's just there, right? And then we have other bits. So to try to answer your question more succinctly, and of course there's a whole level of sound which was hugely important for me, but is that I really wanted that I wanted to explore um, uh, how to tell a story in another way, in a more sensorial way. I mean, people that seem to connect with the film, really you have to let go into that because it doesn't have a voiceover. Obviously it doesn't have a conventional narrative, but that for me as a filmmaker was a real starting point for the film too, is how can a story be told in another way.
and also telling a story through the expression of these animals, right? And
Yes.
these incredible sequences in Bresson, or where we're just sort of seeing an animal in close up, right? And it's just, there's a different way that they're absorbing the world, and we fall into that rhythm, and that's what's so rare about this. And I really encourage, if people can hear it in the best possible sound system. Of course, when you premiere in Cannes, you have this incredible, you're seeing it in the best possible way, and it's a lovely way to show your film for the first time to the world. But I do think that if people can actually either listen to this with headphones or through really great speakers, because the sound design and the music is just so subtle and lovely, and you're hearing things that you haven't heard before, and it's important to experience it at all the levels of perception that we have as well. um yeah, it's thank you so much. It's a really it's a rare and special film. I can't really I've had the experience of watching it a few times because I was preparing for this, and then also having seen it, a few months ago and coming back to it. It just really it stays with you, and I want to thank you for it.
Well, thanks so much, Adam.